What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB, and more specifically, an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. Now, as you guys know, we've been going through these divisional breakdowns in depth about players that you should be targeting in Dynasty Fantasy Football, players that could improve their ranking over the course of the year, maybe decrease their ranking over the course of the year, busts, breakouts, values, all that good stuff. We got you covered, but you know it wouldn't be an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty without my co-host, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get him into the building. Let's start talking some fantasy football, and let's start talking about the NFC South. War, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It was exciting day of preseason football yesterday, man, and I'm going to just keep it rolling.
Just keep it rolling, man. We kind of talked about on the last episode some of the stuff that happened during the preseason. We got some games going on right now. Sounds like Javonte Williams is getting 100% of the workload for the running backs there in Denver right now. So I don't know. Maybe Javonte breakout on the way. We'll see. He was your guy last year. Maybe post-hype sleeper. Maybe.
Did on the documentary.
We'll see. But we are here today to talk about the NFC South. We got 4 teams that we'll talk about in today's episode. As I mentioned, players that we're watching, players we think can improve upon their current KTC rank, all the good stuff. But let's just start it off. We'll start it off the way that we've been doing it with these episodes, going from the lowest projected win total in 2024 to the highest projected win total. And this division has a team that has a pretty low projected win total. That is going to be the Carolina Panthers. They have a projected win total of 5.5. Now, probably rightfully so, because you look at last year for the Panthers, 2 wins, 15 losses. Missed the playoffs, obviously. Going into the offseason, their biggest improvement really has been in the offensive line during the free agent period. And then in the NFL draft, they added Xavier Legette, Jonathan Brooks, Jatavian Sanders, and they traded for Diontae Johnson. So lots of improvements here on the offense. Additionally, we have a hiring of Dave Canales, who helped resurrect the careers of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield over the last couple of years. He's going to be coming in to help try and resurrect or jumpstart Bryce Young's career. He also brings in offensive play caller in Brad Idzik, but doesn't really matter because Canales is going to call this offense. With the win total at 5.5 wins, with the additions, are you going over, you're going under?
This team is in contention with the Titans for one of the worst teams in the NFL. I think this ownership group, I feel sorry for the coach because he's probably not that bad, but he's going to have a very bad season. Feel bad for the quarterback. He's probably already ruined. It's tough to say, but man, I'm going to take the under. It's tough to say. And as a Bears fan,
feels so low.
It does. As a Bears fan, I love they're getting the under because that means we might very well get the 33rd pick in the second round. So we've already took so much from them. Yeah, man, this team is in trouble.
Yeah, this is tough, man, because I do believe in Dave Canales. You know I was a Bryce Young truther last year.
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be improvement this year. I mean, I don't think they're going to win 2 games again. 2 games sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think they'll improve. There's going to be improvement to become a 6-win team and go over the line. It could happen. But maybe this is a 5-win team, a 6-win team. I don't know. That's kind of where I feel them being.
Yeah.
I don't think, though, if the improvement happens, which I do believe it will, it's not going to be Dave Canales getting fired next offseason. It's not going to be Bryce Young, being kicked out of town. I don't think those things happen. I think that they go into year 3 knowing that the team that was inherited by Dave Canales this year is a work in progress. It's probably a 2-year rebuild, 3-year rebuild for this Carolina Panthers team. They got the quarterback of the future. At least they think they do right now. They got some wide receiver weapons finally for him. Last year, obviously, Adam Thielen, the only guy. Now you have Diontae Johnson, Xavier Legette. It should be better. It should be better. Jonathan Brooks should be better. That being said, 5.5. I'm with you. It sounds crazy. But I'll go lower. But there's still some interesting fantasy football options on this team. So let's talk about those guys. This is the craziest thing to me, though. You have Jonathan Brooks as the running back 12 in fantasy right now. This is Superflex KTC, keep trade cut, top 250. Bryce Young is being valued lower than the running back in this offense with an ACL tear. That sounds ridiculous, but we can talk about that in depth later. Quarterback 20, Diontae Johnson, wide receiver 42, Xavier Legette, wide receiver 46, Jatavian Sanders, tight end 21, Chuba Hubbard, running back 55, Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver 82, and Adam Thielen, wide receiver 92, really sneaking in there at 250. So just looking at the ADP, I mean, I think it's wild to have Jonathan Brooks as a better dynasty asset than Bryce Young at this moment, but I digress. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think Jonathan Brooks is He's a little overvalued. I was actually looking right now to see because in one of our leagues, I did have Jonathan Brooks on my roster, and I did sell Jonathan Brooks because right now he's a little bit overvalued. Him being rated over a quarterback, that's crazy. I don't know if it's just hate for Bryce Young because of his season last season or Brooks being overvalued, but that definitely shouldn't be the case. He should not be the running back. He should definitely not be the highest rated player for fantasy in this offense. And that's not me crapping on him. I'm just stating what he is. But yeah, that's kind of crazy to me, man. The hype train for Jonathan Brooks is kind of out of control.
It's really out of control, and it almost feels like it's not going to end because he's only going to, miss the time, then get on the football field, and then he's going to probably go up once we start seeing him play football too. Like, it feels like it's going to get out of control even more so. Now, I do want to, again, we're talking super flex ADP. There's no way ever I am going to be drafting the running back on a bad offense over the number one overall quarterback pick by this team on the same offense. Like, if I'm going to take the shot in a super flex league on one of these assets, give me the quarterback. It's more valuable than the running back.
Yeah.
It feels crazy that they're swapped. It should be Bryce Young is the most valuable asset on this team. And to be honest, like, I think there's an argument that Brooks and Legette should be very close. First round wide receiver and a second round running back, like, they should be close, I think. Now, looking at the ADPs, I want to say that they are not that close. You have Jonathan Brooks at 66, Legette at 117. That's a big gap. Diontae Johnson there at the 104. That's the way I would have it, though. I would have Diontae as the better asset than Legette right now. But it also feels to me, outside of that, like, Chuba Hubbard might be a little bit undervalued this year just because of the Jonathan Brooks injury. Jatavian Sanders, I'm kind of getting out on JT Sanders. Like, I liked him pre-draft process on the tape, but everything since the NFL draft, it's just been mid. Like, everything just feels like it's been mid. Like, I don't really know if I want JT Sanders anymore, and I don't know. He just feels like a player that I don't want on my rosters. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, man, Drew, am I wrong for saying I really don't care about anything after Legette? I don't care
What,
about
just
JT.
just
I don't care about Go. I don't care about Hubbard. Like, I really don't care about Miles Sanders. He's not even listed there. Just wanted to reiterate, I don't care about him. Like, yeah, man. As far as we already talked about how we both feel the same about Brooks shouldn't be rated that high. I traded Brooks for Jordan Addison this offseason. That's kind of crazy because Addison is definitely more valuable than Brooks. This is just a bad offense. Like, I feel like we're splitting hairs on the Titanic. So, like, this is a bad offense. We could talk about this team all day, but the reality is that none of these guys are probably going to be the reason why you win your Dynasty League this year.
No, I think that, if this offense improves, which we're hoping it does under Dave Canales, that's what he was hired to do. If it improves, there's chance for some value. You're getting Bryce Young low in drafts. Like, there's a chance for him to increase in value going into next year. If he gets the Baker Mayfield resurrection, the Geno Smith resurrection, like, there's a chance that he increases in value. That's probably partially the reason why I was buying him this offseason, because you're getting him, like, really, really late. Former number one pick. Like, if you're going to take a shot on somebody, take a shot on that guy. And then also, like, there's a chance for Legette to increase. I think I really do believe that Diontae Johnson is probably going to be one of the best values at the wide receiver position this year, just because he is going to be massively, massively targeted. Like, his target share is going to be insane. And so in a PPR league, he's probably going to get a lot of volume, a lot of scoring points there, just off the receptions alone. And I think just looking at the ADP, I'll bring it up one more time. I know I brought it up a couple times. He's going in the 40s. You're getting him as a wide receiver 4 on your roster, or a low end wide receiver 3. And he probably, it might sound hot takey, he's probably going to finish as a wide receiver 2. Like, he'll probably be a top 25 guy, most likely, like, just based off the volume.
That's interesting because, I mean, let's not forget he still is Diontae Dropson. So let's just
hyper targeted Diontae Johnson is what I like to call him instead.
Also is allergic to the end zone, but
we'll see.
We'll see. If Bryce Young is like, let me ask you this: will this season officially determine whether or not Bryce Young is a bust?
I mean, I can't say it'll officially determine it. I mean, if he goes out and shows improvement and shows flashes, do you give him another year to, do it again, improve again? Probably. But if he goes out this year and he looks the same way he did last year, yeah, he's done. It's over.
Yeah. You usually don't survive 2 of those.
Yeah,
Usually
I mean,
2 of those is
that's Zach Wilson. Like, you go out there,
yeah.
you give you the 2 stinkers and you're out of there. See you later. Mac Jones, bye.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's gonna happen if he is the
And
same.
he's
Bryce.
getting the benefit of the doubt too. He's getting the benefit of the doubt because unlike those other 2 guys, he hasn't done anything to show like he's an a-hole. So I mean, yes, I mean, like mostly it's like whereas Mac Jones and Zach Wilson is kind of like, guy, he's not playing good and he's kind of a prick. Bryce Young's kind of like, he's such a good kid.
Yeah, he's not having relations with anybody's mother. Like he's fine.
Yeah. I think most of us feel for Bryce Young because we feel like he's a good kid that got a raw deal.
Yep. Yeah, for real. I mean, that's the way it looks. But who knows, man? There's not a lot that I want to talk about here.
No.
I guess one thing you can note is going into the year, first 5 games. I like to look at the first 5 games because outside of that, defenses change throughout the year. It's hard to project, but the schedules actually for this team are pretty friendly at the beginning of the year. So it's a good opportunity for these assets to get on a good step forward, to start the year off. Bryce Young, the 13th easiest quarterback schedule, 13th easiest running back schedule, 12th easiest wide receiver schedule, and the 8th easiest tight end schedule. So, top third of the NFL should be a nice opportunity for them to kind of go out there, get this offense rolling under Dave Canales and see what happens. So keep an eye on it, over the first 5 weeks. If it looks like Bryce Young has made improvement and he's, this offense looks better as a whole, keep an eye on that because if anybody's going to make, the next Baker Mayfield jump, it's going to be the guy who coached Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, Bryce Young, you know what I mean? So we'll see. But let's move on to the next team. I'll be honest, it's not that much more fun to talk about, but you do have the New Orleans Saints. Projected win total of 7.5 wins. As I was going through this team, we'll talk about it more on the ADPs. There's not a ton of assets that you love for Dynasty, I'll be honest. 9 wins last year. They missed the playoffs in 2023. In free agency and in the trade market this offseason, didn't add anything, major for fantasy football purposes. In the NFL draft, the only Dynasty relevant addition would have been Spencer Rattler that got added to this team. You get Clint Kubiak, who is going to be replacing Pete Carmichael as the team's offensive coordinator. He's been the offensive coordinator there since 2009, so it's the first time in a long time that they'll have a new offensive coordinator here. Kubiak, he kind of emphasizes a run-first offense. He relies on play action, misdirection, some of the things that the Saints really regressed on last time. This time last season. So it's going to be interesting, a new look offense for the most part, but it'll still be run heavy. So Kamara, those guys, maybe still some values right now. But looking at 7.5 wins, knowing they went 9 wins last year, you taking the over or the under?
Taking the under. They look like a perfect 6-win team to me. There's not much to get excited about with this offense. The quarterback position is pedestrian. I wasn't going to say specifically, but let's just group them all together. They're all pedestrian. Chris Olave, he's a good wide receiver. He's not a great one. Kamara was a great running back. He's reaching the age cliff. Kendre Miller, he's a wait and see. There's just not too much to be excited about for this team. If there's any saving grace, and I mean any saving grace whatsoever, is that the division has 2 bad teams, them being one of them, 1 mid team, and then the team that's probably just going to feast on the rest of the division. So, I mean, at least there's probably 2 wins right there, so they just have to get 4 more to reach 6, but no matter what, I don't think they're getting 8. That's too close to a winning season for them.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think this is a team, we talked about it on the last episode, about the Titans maybe being one of the teams that really has an opportunity to draft the next quarterback of the future if they have a disappointing year. And maybe Shadur next year, maybe Carson Beck, whatever. You pick your flavor. I honestly would not be surprised if, the Saints are losing football games this year and they throw Spencer Rattler out there and see what they got. I think Rattler, he was undervalued probably in the NFL draft. His talent probably was better than the draft capital that he got in the 5th round. Now, that being said, there's some off the field stuff that people are always going to have with Spencer Rattler. Size isn't prototypical size. He's not a perfect prospect, but I think that they'll want to see what they can get out of Spencer Rattler, because if they don't, I don't know, man. It feels like a wasted pick, because I don't think Carr is the future here. I think everybody in the building knows that. I think the fans know that. I think everybody who has two eyeballs knows that Derek Carr is not going to be a Saint for much longer.
Yeah, like you said yesterday, I'm not gonna say everything you said, but Derek Carr is better off as a preacher. I mean, maybe he'll retire to do that, but yeah, man, I think, oh man, this will be a bad team. Not gonna be as bad as the Panthers, but they'll be pretty bad. If you're one of those teams that's slated to play the NFC South this season, congratulations. Probably got some easy victories there.
And let's also just throw it out there. Not really fantasy related news, but there have been quite a few rumblings of Marshawn Lattimore trades being floated around this offseason. So if they trade Lattimore, who's been like one of the best defensive pieces on this roster for many of years, if they move on from him, that could, we could be looking at Saints rebuild right now.
Yes.
So
that's probably what they need to do, to be honest.
Hey, we got a Saints fan friend, Marshall, who said the other day, he said he thinks that the Saints just need to blow this thing up. So we'll see what they do. But let's look at the ADP for these Saints. Like I said, there's probably not a lot of options that we love. You got Chris Olave. He's obviously the cream of the crop. He's the guy that you want on the Saints roster because he's young, he's talented, he's everything you got. Outside of that, he's coming off the board as wide receiver 13. Outside of that, the next best guy is coming off the board at 127th. Alvin Kamara is running back 27. You already said the age cliff is close, maybe a value for a contending roster. Rashid Shaheed is the next guy, wide receiver 63. Kendra Miller, running back 42. Derek Carr, QB 32, and then Spencer Rattler right behind him, QB 36. So really looking at the ADP, I mean, it's Chris Olave and then Kamara as a vet to add to a contending roster, and then you're taking, gambles on Shaheed, Miller, Rattler. That's pretty much the rest of the roster. So any takeaways here? I mean, to me, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. No big takeaways here. Like I said, the only player that I really want is Olave. Kamara, I want him if it's a good value.
I don't mind Shaheed.
Yeah, I like Shaheed too, man. I know you're high on Shaheed. I'm kind of high on Shaheed. Definitely, if you could grab him for cheap. But I think the secret's starting to get out on Shaheed, so people are getting a little bit wiser about what he could possibly do. Yeah, man, this team is
bad.
When the quarterback position is bad to pedestrian, it's really hard to get excited about the rest of the team, especially when you're a running back, you're formerly top two running back, depends heavily now on getting those receptions and things like that. So I'm not too excited about it. It makes me less excited about Olave too. So
yeah, I think there's a chance Olave's overvalued in the community too. I mean, if they go out and have a bad year and he gives you another season where he's a wide receiver 2, I can't imagine we're drafting him as a top 15 guy anymore.
No.
So I think the likelihood of like all of these guys, honestly, like we talked about a little bit of like who's going to improve and who's going to decrease in value. I think Olave could trend down over the course of the year. I think Kamara could trend down over the course of the year due to age. I think Shaheed could stay pretty much put, maybe trend down. Like I can't imagine he improves too much. Rattler maybe improves because he gets a starting job, and then Carr probably declines. Like for the most part, all of the assets on this roster are probably going to decline.
Yeah, it sucks when your team's headed towards an obvious like rebuild. This is usually how it goes. You end up with the quickly declining fantasy asset.
Yeah, and it's
some of these guys move on to other teams.
It's funny because you got like we were talking about the Panthers and saying like, man, this isn't going to be a good football team, but they have more exciting fantasy assets for our dynasty teams. I mean, we're talking like Bryce Young. You still have hope for Bryce. You still have hope for a Legette, a Jonathon Brooks, a Diontae Johnson, like a JT Sanders. If you want to have hope in him at tight end, like there's more options here. There's just not a lot. People like Kendra Miller. I think he's pretty pedestrian. I made a video early in the offseason about, Kendra Miller maybe being a breakout candidate this year. But a lot of development has happened since that. That was like in February or March. It sounds like he is not having a good camp, and it doesn't sound good for Kendra. He's also injured again. So overall, I don't know, man. I can't honestly. outside of Olave, and Rattler, I think Olave and Rattler, they're the only two that I would even invest in here.
Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it.
That's it. All right, let's move on to the next one because that was a bad get for the team for Dynasty. But this is a little bit better. We'll talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now they won this division last year. They went to the divisional round. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card, and then they lost to the Lions. So 9-8, that was the record. Free agent trade additions, nothing really there. But in the NFL draft, they go and they get Jalen McMillan out of Washington and Bucky Irving out of Oregon. They're going to be filling the void of Dave Canales at the offensive coordinator. They've hired former Rams offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, and Cohen's kind of bounced back and forth from college and the NFL and college and the NFL and back. He's done it a few times over the last couple of seasons, so it's probably going to be pretty tough for him to follow and step into the shoes of Dave Canales after he revitalized Baker Mayfield's career, but they have the schedule to do it. The schedule is very easy to start the year. They have the first easiest quarterback schedule, the 21st at running back, the first easiest wide receiver schedule, and the second easiest tight end schedule. So pretty much the easiest in the NFL at 3 of the 4 positions. 7.5 wins, over or under?
Over, because I could give them 4 wins right now. Panthers, Saints. That's 4 wins.
There's 4.
Right now. Especially if they trade Marshawn Lattimore, who's the Mike Evans stopper. Then they're really gonna lose those games. Win those games. I said that this division has 2 horrible teams, a mid team, and a team that's going to feast on the rest of the division. This is indeed that mid team. Them being mid means that I see them getting 8 or 9 wins. That's mid. I think they'll have a semi-successful season. Baker Mayfield, let's see if he can continue on with, what he was doing last season. The 2 wide receivers, I am worried about one of them taking a slight step back. I'm worried about the other taking a major step back. But with that being said, I'm also very high on Jalen McMillan. I think that he will fill that void, maybe make that step back a little less painful. See, I could have them penciling in about 8 or 9 wins.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what you said. In fact, before we go to, actually, let me just give my prediction on the win total, and then we'll talk about the ADPs because we'll get more into player takes. But I think this is a team that's going to go over. I mean, it was 7.5 wins, right? That's what they were at, 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're going over that, man. They won 9 last year. They probably are going to be similar and or better this year. So let's look at the ADPs. In the top 250, you got Rachaad White as running back 14, Mike Evans is wide receiver 35, Baker Mayfield is QB 21, Chris Godwin wide receiver 44, Jalen McMillan is wide receiver 70, Bucky Irving is running back 51, Cade Otton is tight end 24, and Trey Palmer is wide receiver 89. So quite a few players here in the top 250. The best player being a running back, but he broke out last year, Rachaad White. How are we feeling about the ADPs? I know you said you're really high on Jalen McMillan. Let me just say, I did a video with BDGE the other day, and we were talking about, keep in mind, you're throwing shots in the dark, and 99.9% chance this doesn't happen, but we were trying to predict the next Puka Nacua, the next Kyron Williams, the next, trying to do the breakouts last year and who could be that this year. For my Puka Nacua, who could be this year's Puka Nacua? I said Jalen McMillan.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You said you think one of these wide receivers is going to slightly regress and one will majorly regress. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I think it's no secret. I don't think very highly of Chris Godwin anymore. And I think he's going to be my major step back. I think Mike Evans is the type of player that will slowly, gracefully go into decline. Chris Godwin, I could see any scenario from where he just becomes just another guy, which he's real. I think we said in previous videos, he's real close to just another guy. He's sitting there next to Terry McLaurin. Like, they're sitting next to each other. Like, hey, we're just guys. Like, they're sitting right there next to each other, in the waiting room, getting ready to get called into the office of irrelevancy. He's right there. I think that it's within. Okay, so first, Jalen McMillan, first of all off season, because I have a McMillan chair now. All off season, all you've heard is how excellent Jalen McMillan has been this off season. He's pretty much already secured the wide receiver 3 position for that team. And that's already in the bag. And I personally think that he should go for the number 2 wide receiver position because he's looking at a wounded animal. Chris Godwin is the deer in the forest that got hit by the hunter and it got away, but it's limping. It's limping. And Jalen McMillan should have an appetite for some venison tonight. So, I think that Chris Godwin's going to take a step back and he potentially lose his position on the team to Jalen McMillan.
Yeah, I'm not a Godwin guy, and in fact, I made a video on the channel last week about busts for 2024 players that I think will just not perform based on their ADP, and I put Chris Godwin. Now there was some haters in the comments that still believed in Chris Godwin, and whatever. They said they wish they played in leagues that I played in so they could get Chris Godwin. And I said you can happily draft Chris Godwin in the leagues that I'm in. That's fine with me. I don't care. Now that being said, I agree. I think McMillan is the long-term replacement here for Godwin. Godwin doesn't seem like he's going to be a Buccaneer for much longer. I can't imagine he gets the extension. I think McMillan comes in, takes his lunch money. That being said, too, I still believe the best bet for this offense is to run through Rachaad White. Rachaad White looked really good last year. People are going to talk about the efficiencies, the yards per carry and yada, yada, yada. He was used as a bell cow for fantasy football. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was an elite running back one for our rosters. In the receiving game, in the running game, on the goal line, everything you want. Like, I think he's going to be used the same way. People are going to have a polarizing prospect in Bucky Irving. Some people are going to say they like Bucky. Some people are going to say they dislike Bucky. I'm not worried about Bucky. Bucky doesn't worry me for Rachaad White right now. I don't know. I think I'm more so worried about this offense taking a step back in the passing game because of the departure of Dave Canales. I think that there could be some regression from Baker Mayfield. We might see him kind of come back to the mean. Think about it, dude. When we had Dave Canales coaching Geno Smith, then Dave Canales leaves, Geno regresses. Now we have him coach Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield impresses. Now he leaves. Baker might regress, and we'll have the full cycle. I don't know. I'm a little bit more worried about Baker Mayfield. In fact, I have sold pretty much every single share of Baker Mayfield that I have had this offseason after last year's good year.
Okay, come on now. We love Baker on the show.
Love Baker. But when I see a sell, he's a sell.
Yeah, but it's hard to get excited about Baker. Like, I definitely need to see him, take strides 2 seasons in a row for me to get to that point where it's like, okay, so the offensive coordinator doesn't matter to him. He's figured it out late, but he's figured it out. You said, same thing happened with Geno. We'll see, man. I think I wouldn't be as fearful of this team as I am of the Saints. I don't think their quarterback situation is as bleak. I also think that Mike Evans has proved that he's kind of wide receiver proof. So
quarterback proof.
Quarterback proof. So I think at the very least, if there's any 2 assets you can feel confident in on this team, it's Rachaad White and Mike Evans. So I'm going to target those 2 guys. And I
actually made a trade in one of my leagues. I made the trade and then I branded it as the Canales theory. So what I did is I traded Baker Mayfield straight across for Bryce Young. And I'm literally calling it the Canales theory because we will see if Canales does improve Bryce Young and Baker regresses, it's Dave Canales that is the variable. So I made a trade calling it the Canales theory. We'll see what happens. One more guy that I want to talk about on this offense though before we go to the next team, because the next team is fun. It is exciting to talk about. Cade Otton. Cade Otton seems to be kind of a sleeper, hidden value type of tight end that I think a lot of people don't talk about. But surprisingly, down the stretch last year, he was all right. Like, he was actually pretty solid with Baker Mayfield. And now they have the second easiest opening schedule at the tight end position. Cade Otton kind of sneaky, or you just don't care about Cade Otton here?
I don't care about Cade Otton. I don't care about him. He's Cade. I like Cade Otton came down. You accidentally said Cade Otton in the last video. So, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, we'll see, man. He's not I don't want him on my roster type of guy. It's just if he's there, he's there. We'll see. He's going to have to be sneaky because nobody's checking for him.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I just look at how he was used, in the playoff run for the Buccaneers. He had a 17-point fantasy week, a 17.5-point fantasy week. He was getting like 8 targets in one game, 11 targets in the other, 2 red zone targets in one game, 1 in the other, finding the end zone. I don't know, man. He seemed like he was used heavy down the stretch, but again, we have a change in offensive coordinator and a change in everything else. So maybe that was just a blimp on the radar.
He's no Isaiah Likely.
He ain't that, I guess. I don't know. You think Isaiah Likely is Mark Andrews proof, so we'll see. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't want to talk about Isaiah Likely. Projected win total from the Falcons. We got 9.5 wins here. They are projected to win this division. And last year they were 7-10. They missed the playoffs. We know the story. Arthur Smith. Everything we hated about fantasy football stemmed here in Atlanta. Now, this offseason, they go ahead and they sign Kirk Cousins, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. He's now the quarterback there. Surprise, also, they drafted Michael Penix Jr. in the first round. What the hell was that? Darnell Mooney added, Rondell Moore added. Rondell Moore will be on IR for the year, though, just because he had an injury recently. And now you look at the coaching staff. The Atlanta Falcons, they've moved on from Smith. They go to Raheem Morris and offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, who both spent a lot of time with Sean McVay in Los Angeles. So they're coming from that Sean McVay coaching tree. Funny thing, too, Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, he also spent some time with Pro Football Focus as an analytics guy. So if you guys know Pro Football Focus, you probably do, PFF. He spent some time with them as well. So we might get a fantasy guy in the building there in Atlanta, which could mean good things for our fantasy teams. This is probably going to be a pass-first offense, basically the opposite of what Arthur Smith has had over the last year or so. But 9.5 wins seems like a decent jump from last year's 7-win total, but rightfully so?
Rightfully so, because I think they're going to smash that win total because their division is pedestrian. Not only
how many wins?
11.
11?
I don't want to get them too much credit just yet. So I say about 11 wins. About 11 wins.
About 11 of them things.
yeah, about 11 of them things. We'll see, man. That division is so weak, and they're going to win games outside of the division too because the offense is poised to be good. They have pieces. Some of these guys with Kirk Cousins, it's kind of like if they don't perform at the level we expected them to perform, that means they just weren't those guys. Kyle Pitts, if he doesn't become what we thought he was going to be, he just was never that guy with Kirk Cousins. Same with Drake London. So we're going to see how it really goes, but I can see about 11 wins for these guys or more.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the favorite to win the division. Like, if I'm a betting man, now, for example, our home league, this is something that we're doing this year. It's our first year doing it, but we saw it on TikTok. Shout out TikTok, I guess, for giving us the idea. But remember, we were talking about picking division winners and using, if we hit on that division winners, we use that for the draft party the next year. So Atlanta is a smash pick for me. Like, there's nobody else that's going to win this division outside of Atlanta to me. So I think they're the clear winner. 9.5 wins. It's a jump. It's a pretty significant jump from 7 last year, but I think they can do it. This could be a double-digit win team. Now, you talked about some of the options there, some of the fantasy options. Way more exciting. I mean, look, we got Drake London, wide receiver 11, Kyle Pitts, tight end 5, Michael Penix Jr., QB 22, with Kirk Cousins right after him, QB 26. Then you got Tyler Algier and Darnell Mooney. And why the hell do I not have Bijan Robinson on this list? Bijan Robinson also should be on this list. He is the running back 1, the 10th overall player, so he should be the best player. I don't know why I don't have him on this list, but just know Bijan Robinson is here, guys. Looking at this, I mean, are we viewing Drake London as a top 12 guy? Are we viewing Bijan as the number 1 running back? Are we viewing Kyle Pitts as a top 6 tight end? Is that accurate?
I'm okay with it, but I got a little caution sign with it because specifically Drake London is valued super high right now amongst the Dynasty community. He's valued really high, and it's kind of just like, okay, I do see an uptick for him, but let's see it first because he might just not he might do well and better than he has before, but he might not just reach the expectation that you guys are putting on him. I think for now it's fine. It's fine where they're rated, but like usually we'll say, would you be surprised if this player outperforms this ADP? I think with these guys it should be, will you be surprised if this guy doesn't meet this ADP?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, for me, Drake London, you know, he's one of my favorite breakout candidates for this year. I mean, everything's just lining up, especially with Kirk Cousins under center. We know how much he likes to hyper target the wide receiver 1. We know how the Rams offense likes to hyper target the wide receivers. Like, it's a perfect mesh here for Drake London. So it's a perfect storm. And like you said, if it doesn't happen, it's probably just because Drake London wasn't that guy. It just is the way that it is. And same thing with Kyle Pitts. I don't have any gripes on where they're currently being valued. I look at London specifically, and yes, he's being valued as like the wide receiver 13. He's in a range with Nico Collins and Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk. I think he belongs in that conversation. That's right where he belongs. I mean, we're talking about Olave potentially moving down, and we're talking about Drake London maybe moving up. Like, I think they belong in the same conversation. I don't think that that's far-fetched. And then Bijan Robinson is the running back 1. I don't know who else you would say is the running back 1 in Dynasty right now. Maybe Bryce. Maybe somebody likes Bryce Hall, but Bijan has to be in that conversation.
Either him or Jahmyr Gibbs are like one of those guys. So
that's the top tier.
Yeah. And that's top tier.
So obviously Algier, he's just a handcuff to Bijan. But the other guys on that list, there's 3 guys I want to talk about, and then we'll get on out of here. The first conversation I want to have is probably a quick one. Darnell Mooney, he is going to be the wide receiver 2. Now, you had been a Darnell Mooney guy for a while when he was in Chicago. You were a Darnell Mooney guy. Don't get it twisted.
Not for the last 2 seasons he was in Chicago.
Yeah, but I remember the Darnell Mooney hype. I remember it.
I did. Do you think Darnell era?
Do you think with an upgraded quarterback play and, the opportunity to be a number 2 alongside Drake London, do you think that means anything for Mooney? You think Mooney can maybe have his best year of his career?
I'll put him in the Rashid Shaheed category.
Okay.
Whereas okay, we'll throw a little flyer on him. He could possibly outperform it. A we'll see type of situation. I definitely would not rely on Darnell Mooney. I would look at him the same way. Like I recently made a move for Curtis Samuel. Didn't make a move for him to be, even my flex player. He's on the roster to be on the bench for me to use him when I need to use him. And that's the same way I would look at Darnell Mooney. But I wouldn't have high expectations for him.
Okay, makes sense. And I probably kind of agree. I think he's a flyer that you can take a shot on. If he outperforms, I'm not going to be surprised. But if he's just what he is, then he is what he is. I don't think that there's anything crazy to it. So the other conversation, though, which is probably a larger conversation, probably a little bit more in depth, is in Dynasty. Obviously, you saw that Michael Penix Jr. is going above Kirk Cousins in ADP and in the rankings. But I don't think it's any secret that we all expect Kirk Cousins to be the starter, right? Like, how are we viewing this quarterback room moving forward for the Falcons?
I think for sure that this is Kirk Cousins' year. If Kirk Cousins has any type of step back, if he doesn't look like the Kirk Cousins that we've grown to know and you've grown to love, then I definitely could see them pulling the plug on him because the NFL is a very impatient league. I don't think they'll hesitate to pull the plug on Kirk Cousins, or at the very least make it an active quarterback position going into next offseason. So I would look at Kirk Cousins as a 1-year rental and a year-to-year type of situation.
Here's where I struggle because I like Michael Penix more since he got the draft capital. I wasn't as huge on him as a prospect when I was just watching the tape before the draft, but ever since he got that draft capital, it's kind of spoken a little bit. Now, here's the thing though. We expect this to be a team that wins the division. You go out, you win the division with Kirk Cousins under center. Why do you change that going into 2025? You won the division. By a landslide is what we're expecting. So I don't know why they would move over to Penix after that year. So then you say you go do that again, or you at least are competitive. What's the incentive to do it again? Like it feels very much like as long as Kirk Cousins is winning football games, which we expect him to do in a bad division where Carolina's rebuilding and New Orleans is looking like they might be rebuilding here soon, there's no incentive to go over to Michael Penix. So in a way, I can't imagine why I would be investing in Michael Penix outside of, I drafted him in my rookie draft and I have Kirk Cousins on my team and now Michael Penix is just my handcuff quarterback. Like that's the way that I'm viewing him. Other than that, you're probably waiting 2-3 years until Penix is the starter. And at that point, like Penix is old, man. Like he's already an older quarterback prospect. I don't know. This feels very much, yes, we've fresh top of mind. We saw Jordan Love do the, sit 3 years, 4th year you come in and you play and you look good. But that's an anomaly, man. That's not normal. And that looks to be the route. When they drafted him, they said, we've seen Jordan Love and stuff do that. See, I don't know, man. It feels very risky. I can't imagine that I really want to be investing in Penix right now, unless I think that Kirk Cousins and the Falcons are going to fail in 2024, and then they'll turn the leaf over to Penix early.
Yeah, it was a very wonky. Let's just say what it is. It was a wonky decision to draft Michael Penix, regardless.
One of the worst draft picks I've probably ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it was very wonky. Created more problems than needed to be created. They could easily drafted a guy within the next couple seasons, but I guess they thought they were going to be too good and weren't going to have the opportunity to pick that high again. So, just boneheaded draft pick. Even if he turns out to be decent, it was still boneheaded, no matter how you look at it.
They needed an edge rusher, and the best edge rusher in the draft in Dallas Turner was sitting on the board, and they didn't pick him. I don't understand why, but I'm grateful that they didn't because Minnesota traded back up and went and got Dallas Turner. So I'm very grateful for that. But it doesn't make sense. And apparently that, who was it? It was somebody tried to trade up and get Rome Odunze with them. Was it you guys? You guys wanted to trade up? And
they said
they said no, and then they took Penix anyways. They could have traded up with you, got your draft capital. You would have taken Odunze, and then they could have just took Penix after. I don't know. Whatever. We'll see. I will never forget Nick's face. We were at that draft party watching it. I'll never forget Nick's face when they drafted Penix. And as much as I think he's come to terms with Michael Penix as the quarterback, I still will not forget the face that he made. I just think it was a horrible pick. Anyways, that is kind of what we have here. Now, major takeaways from the division. I think, we expect Atlanta to run away with it. It's not a good division. This division is full of a lot of bad football teams and not very exciting fantasy football assets. I mean, we're talking about some of the most exciting guys in this division being Rachaad White, Olave, London, those types of folks, Jonathan Brooks. It's not as good as some of the other divisions we've talked about. That's for sure. I'm going to throw something on that I haven't done in the other episodes. And this came to my head. I'm just going to spring it on you right now. So bear with me.
All right, let's have it.
Of every player we talked about today, which player has the most surprising 2024 season?
Jalen McMillan.
Jalen McMillan?
Yeah, hands down.
I don't mind it. I think for me, I'm going to go with, it's probably not going to be the most surprising, but I think Drake London lives up to the hype. I think Drake London becomes him. Like, I think he really is going to be one of the top. We're going to talk about him as like a top 7, top 8 dynasty wide receiver by the end of the year. That's my prediction.
All right.
So we'll see, man. That's it, though. So if you guys did like the episode, we did do the AFC South earlier this week. Go to the Let's Talk Dynasty playlist and check that out. We also did the NFC and the AFC North the last couple of weeks. We're going to keep banging these out over the next 2 weeks as we approach the NFL season. If you guys haven't already, you watched the video up to this point, you've listened to this video on Spotify or Apple up to this point, go down, leave a review on Spotify and Apple. On YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all that good stuff for us. Comment. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Maybe give us your predictions in the comments section for this division specifically. Would help us a lot. That said, War, what do you got for the folks before we get on out of here?
Over on Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling, you know the name. We talk about pro wrestling, WWE, AEW. Come check us out. Like, subscribe to the videos. We much appreciate it. We're trying to beat that algorithm, guys. Thank you so much, MFGDs. And that's it. Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling with an attitude.
Hell yeah, guys. More content coming this week. As always, make sure you're tapped in, join the Discord, do all the good stuff. But I have nothing else for you guys today. So we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.